Coffey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I say to Gillian Martin that we on this side are absolutely in favour of safety nets. But this is not really the substance of what this is all about. Because this bill is a cynical, rushed power grab by the SNP. Look, in principle, I support governments using emergency powers in times of national crisis. But I balance this, however, with a full commitment towards parliamentary democracy. And this Parliament should be able to scrutinise the decisions taken by government. Someone said a few minutes ago, I will in a second, someone said a few minutes ago, it's the duty of all members of this Parliament to scrutinise the executive. That also applies, by the way, to the members of the government party. Yes.
John Mason.
Given that this bill is reducing the powers the government has, does it really take a lot of scrutiny?
Stephen Kerr.
Oh, my goodness me. I'm not very sure whether that's an intervention that the member will be proud of when he looks back on it. I mean, the fact is this bill still consists of considerable powers. And this Parliament should take the time to scrutinise this bill and those powers. Are they necessary? That should be the concern of every parliamentarian. The first concern I have is that 3 days of a parliamentary debate is not enough time to fully scrutinise this bill as it stands. And it's not only me, it's not only my Conservative colleagues that have this concern. To quote Amnesty International, quote, "While Amnesty has listened to the arguments made by ministers for the extremely short time period allowed for the scrutiny of this bill, we would take this opportunity to highlight the unsatisfactory restrictions the timescale places on scrutiny and participation in decision-making, including the lack of formal consultation." Now, I don't know if the member wants to intervene on me and disagree with this observation from Amnesty International. I would suspect he doesn't. Yes.
Patrick Harvey.
I'm grateful to the member for giving way. I don't think anybody thinks that this is satisfactory or that anything about living in a global pandemic is satisfactory, but it is necessary. And if the member wants to call this a power grab, can he point to any power that the government will have as a result of passing this bill that they don't currently have?
Stephen Kerr.
If I may say so, that's the whole point. I mean, as we go through this summer, the situation is changing rapidly. There is no need for us to rush this bill through this Parliament in the next 3 days. The powers that Patrick Harvey mentions that we're debating expire on the 30th of September 2021. And between this date and that date, the government should be consulting with experts and members of the public about these powers. The weeks of parliamentary time after recess could be used by this Parliament to scrutinise the government's proposals as they were fit for purpose at that time in detail. Then we could consider all of our options in terms of legislation, given the situation we find ourselves in. But that's not what this SNP government is about, because they're trying to steamroll this bill through this Parliament, and frankly, that is a power grab. When the government doesn't need these powers any longer, it should give them up, and we should be reviewing that when we get to the first week of September. The 30th of September is a long way away. Yes, I will.
Stuart McMillan.
I thank Mr Kerr for taking the intervention, but would he accept that, as the example I provided to the Chamber a short time ago, there's already a situation where the government are removing some of the powers that it potentially actually did have, because it no longer needs to have them. So would Mr Kerr agree that the Scottish Government are doing the right thing? They are following the law that was actually passed by this Parliament.
Stephen Kerr.
I welcome the fact the government's giving up these extraordinary powers in some areas. I asked Stuart McMillan in his speech whether or not he would support my suggestion that if we got to the first week of September, if this bill gets pushed through this Parliament with this undue haste, would he agree with me that this Act, as it would be then, should be repealed there and then? But he couldn't answer then, and he's not answering now. The reality is the powers... Well, yes, please.
Stuart McMillan.
Thank you. It's Mr Kerr. I mean, this is a piece of legislation that hopefully will be passed this week. And then, as the legislation indicates, when the powers are no longer required, certainly within that 6-month period, if they're no longer required, then the government will not use them. And also this bill, as Mr Kerr will already know, will have to be considered in 6 months' time again.
Stephen Kerr.
How does the member know that we won't need these powers in the first week of September? That we won't not need these powers in the first week of September? You don't know that. The Deputy First Minister, once again, demonstrating with his hands in that kind of way he does. This is a serious point. How do you know that you will need those powers in the first week of September? We should be waiting until the first week of September to review the situation. Look at the progress that the First Minister, your First Minister, Deputy First Minister, highlighted in her statement. And she highlighted the success of the vaccines. There's a vaccine miracle, as I think we could rightly call it. And it was due to the foresight of the procurement of the UK government. And I would particularly mention Matt Hancock and Nadeem Sahawi, that we have enough vaccines in this country to deliver the vaccines to every adult and perhaps even youth. We also have to thank our frontline NHS staff and volunteers across the UK who have played such a role in putting these vaccines into people's arms. Through the collective effort of these people and many more, thousands of lives have been saved. And I can sense from the presiding officer that my time is up. So I would simply... I can go on longer if she would allow me, but I mean, I can see it's
Please
a popular
conclude.
The reality is, presiding officer, if we see a successful rollout of the vaccine in the next few weeks and months, then the situation we come back to after recess could be dramatically different. And it is because of this that I asked the government to postpone. It's because I asked the government to postpone the debate around the extension of emergency powers until after recess, and you use the remaining parliamentary time this week to debate the issues that Scotland immediately faces due to the pandemic. Had I had more time, I would have expanded on that. These are issues that are serious issues that this parliament should be debating this week. We should not be spending this week debating an SNP power grab.